Day grade 12 learners, welcome to today's geography lesson. My name is Nomthandazo Malembe. This lesson is brought to you by the Northern Cape Department of Education in collaboration with Phakama Research and Development. So today, learners, we are focusing on the prelim revision. We're going to look at our paper 2. Under paper 2, we're going to look at our question 3, which is the map work. But before we start with our lesson, I just want us to go through our lesson objective. So by the end of this lesson, learners, you should be able to identify the structure for paper 2 and also focusing on the following topics. We will be looking at the map skills. Secondly, we're going to look at the map calculation. We're looking at the map interpretation. And then lastly, we will be looking at the GIS questions. But before we start again with our lesson, I just want us to go through the examination tips based on our paper 2. So paper 2, it also allocated with 150 marks, just like your paper 1. And also the time allocation, it is 3 hours. In that 3 hours, again, you will have the 2 sections, which is your section A and your section B. Under your section A, you're going to have your question 1, which is your settlement geography. Remember, settlement geography, the questions can be based on the rural settlement or at the urban settlement. Then question 2, you will have your economic geography. Then you move to your section B, which is your map work. Then again, to further break down the questions, as we have emphasized that in your question 1, it's where you should expect questions based on your rural and your urban settlement. Again, you will have your question 1, figure 1.1 as well as figure 1.2, whereby you will have your short objective questions. Your short objective questions, they may come as a multiple choice, whereby you are given the 4 choices to choose from, or you can be given column A and column B. By now, you're supposed to know that column A and column B, you are only given 2 options, which will make your answers to be much clearer, because you are now only comparing the 2 answers. Then you will also be given maybe in the bracket whereby you're supposed to choose the correct answer again. But all in all, your short objective questions will be 15. So what happens as the question comes in figures? Your figure 1.1, if it has 7 questions, your figure 1.2 will have 8 questions. Then you will have your figure 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. Those 3 figures, it's where you should expect your long as well as your medium questions. When you are talking about the long questions, remember they may come as the 3 times 2, whereby you're supposed to give 3 responses per question, or in a paragraph a question. So amongst the question 1, from figure 1.3 up until 1.5, you will have 1 paragraph question. Then you move to your question 2. Under your question 2, you should expect questions from economic geography. Again, you will start with the short objective questions, which are 15. So now they will come as 2.1 or 2.2. Again, it is advisable that you first write the numbering so that you make sure that you did not miss any question. Then after you are done with your short objective questions, you will then move to your long questions, which is figure 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5. So amongst those 3 figures, again, you will have your long question, which is a paragraph question. Then remember, your question 1, its total is 60 marks, and your question 2, the total is 60 marks again. Then you move to your section B. Under your section B, it's question 3, which is your map work questions. So under your map work questions, again, you will have your map skills as well as calculation. They will be grouped together and they will give you 10 marks as figure 3.1. Then figure 3.2 is where you should expect questions from map interpretation. It will give you 12 marks. Remember, when it comes to the map interpretation, the examiner can give any questions based on the settlement and based on the economic geography. Then lastly, it is figure 3.3. Under figure 3.3, it is a GIS questions and it has 8 marks. So the total there for your map work, it will be 30 marks, which will make 150 from the 120 from the theory. Then to give you the examination tips, so remember we start by reading the general information. So why are we reading the general information? It's because maybe sometimes you are not familiar with the area in question. So therefore, if you are reading the general information of that area, there is where you will realize where is it located and what kind of an area, what are the economic activities that are done there, are there any rural settlement or urban settlement. Remember when it comes especially to map interpretation. Then after that, you need to read the questions twice again. Read the question in full and then read it again. Even sometimes you can even translate the question into your own home language for you to understand the questions better before you can even start answering. Then you need to underline the keywords again. When we are saying underline the keywords, if the question is saying identify or state, you need to give one answer. But now if the question is saying explain or account or suggest, that's where now you give a full explanation of the answer. Then we're looking at the mark allocation. Remember, if you are looking at mark allocation, some of the questions, they do not specify or indicate how many responses you're supposed to give, but you need to look at the mark allocation so that you are aware. If it's saying 1 times 2, it means give one answer that will give you 2 marks. If it's saying 2 times 2, give 2 answers that will give you 4 marks altogether. Then you also need to use a calculator, especially when you are doing your calculations. Do not assume, but use a calculator so that you make sure that the calculations are accurate. Then you need to double check your answers again as you are doing your calculation. Just double check if you have calculated correctly. And also, when it comes to the measurement, you need to make sure that you measure correctly. Remember, we're using a 30 centimeter ruler. On that 30 centimeter ruler, you're supposed to make sure that you start from 0 at the first point up until the next point. And also, do not forget to write the units. If they are saying calculate the area in meters squared, so the meter squared, that is your unit. If they are saying calculate in kilometer, then your kilometer becomes your unit. Then we're looking at the map today as we are focusing on question 3. Question 3, which is the map work. So we're going to use a map of Saldanha Bay. So even if you don't have the map of Saldanha Bay, we have included the pictures so that you can see what we are talking about. So again, you will be given a general information. That general information, it has the location of the area that is in study. And also, then you will also be given the general information like this one. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to go through the general information of the Saldanha Bay, and then after 3 minutes, we will then be able to go through the questions. Right? I believe we are all done with the general information. So now, to get in today's business, we are now looking at the real questions. So your question 3, figure 1.1, we said it's where you should expect questions based on your map skills as well as your calculation. So refer to the topographical map and orthophoto map. Remember, you will always be given 2 sets of maps, which is your topographic and your orthophoto. Then your 3.1.1, what is the direction? Remember, direction, it also falls under map skills as well as calculation. So what is the direction of the lighthouse I? So you are given a lighthouse I. in block D5 from a diesel, which is J, in block A1. So what is the direction there? Is it A, your northeast? Is it B, your southeast? Is it C, your northwest? And is it D, your southwest? So I'm going to give you 1 minute, and then after 1 minute, we will be able to go through the solution. Then we move to the next question. Right? We were looking at the direction there. So how do we get the direction? So remember, you are given a lighthouse in I from the south, the Dieselville, a J in block A1. So what happens? You're supposed to put your compass again. Remember our question, our answer, it is a southeast. So this is our east and this is our north, your south and your west. So the area that you were supposed to find is this I, which is between your south and your east. So hence our answer, it is your southeast. So again, the direction, remember you started to learn them from primary school. Then our second question, the coordinates of the wind pump. Remember the coordinates again are one of the calculations. So the coordinates of the wind pump H in block A1. So here is the wind pump H. By now, you're supposed to know that when you are doing your coordinates, you're supposed to start with the degrees and then followed by the minutes as well as the seconds. By now, you're supposed to know that the degrees, they do not change. So what changes is the minutes. And again, you are guided by which block are you referring to. So for this one, we are referring at block A. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to work on these coordinates. And then after 2 minutes, we will be able to come up with the solution. Right? Looking there at our solution, we are looking at a D, which is your 32 degrees, and your 59 minutes, which is 54 seconds south, and 17 degrees and 54 minutes, 12 minutes east. So what happened here? Remember, the examiner can ask you to generate these coordinates without being given options to choose from. So we said, the degrees, they do not change. Remember, we always start with the south direction. So hence it is 32. And our picture is in block A. Your block A, we start with the minutes of 59. So it means at A, the minutes are 59. If our picture was in block B, so it means now it was going to be 60. But now, because we are still at block A, which is 59, hence it is 59. Remember again, as you reach that block where the picture is, you need to divide your block again. You have 30 seconds, and then you need to further divide, whereby you now have 15 seconds, 30, and then further divide, you now have your 45 seconds, and then at the end of the block, it's where you have your 60 seconds. So what happens? You then locate. You count using the inches of your ruler from your 45 up until you reach the line that we have drawn in line with the picture. So hence you see here there is 20, there is 54. Then the direction, because we always start with the south direction, and then comma. We're working out on our east direction now. It's 17 degrees, as you can see. Remember, the degrees, they do not change. And then what changes are the minutes. But now, because we are at block A1, so our minutes are to number 1, they are 54. So if the minutes are 54, they do not change because we are still at number 1. Then again, you further divide the block into 30 seconds, then further divide into 15, and then again into 45 and 60. Then you locate our a fixture, hence we have 12. So that's how you work it out if you are not given the options. Then we're looking at our third question, still on the map skills and calculation. Your 3.1.3, the true bearing. We are now looking at the true bearing from the trick beacon 173F in block C2 to spot height 72G in block C1. So this is the one that we are looking for up until your spot height G at 72. So remember again, by now you're supposed to identify which point starting with the from. That point is the one that you're going to draw your true north line and then you connect. Then for you to identify or to determine the true bearing, you're supposed to use a protractor. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes so that you are able to plot and then your points, and then after 3 minutes we'll be able to identify what is our option between our option A as well as your option D. Right? Looking there at our solution as we're determining the true bearing from a spot height or trigonometric 173F in block C2 and spot height 72. So what happens, remember the point that is starting with the from is the one that you're supposed to draw a true north line. So you're using a ruler so that your line will be accurate to draw this true north line. And then after that, the block C2 to spot height G2. So what happens to the spot height G2? You then simply connect again to the first point. So make sure that your line is very long, that you are able to place the protractor and you can still read the line. So here, once you have connected the 2 points, you then need to make a mark where the 2 points are meeting. So this is where you're gonna place your protractor. Remember, especially if you are using a 361, you'll have the line at the center. That line at the center, it's supposed to be in line with your true north line. Then you will have a cross at the center again, where you're supposed to place it where your 2 points meet. Then after that, you read as you see that our answer is 240 degrees. So it is advisable again that you use a 360 protractor so that you don't have to add that 180 degrees if you are using the 180. Then your figure 3.1. 3.1.4, you refer to the topographical map extract as well as the orthophoto map extract. Then you calculate the area of 5, the area of 5, which is this one. On the orthophoto map in meters squared, we are calculating an area. So you will always be given a formula. So the formula for an area is length times breadth. And then after that, I'm going to give you 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solution. Right, girls and boys, I hope we are still together. As we were calculating the area number 5 and our answer, it was supposed to be on a meters squared. So what happened is you need to measure first the 2 sides so that you can know which one is the length and which one is the breadth. Remember, this is the side that you need to measure. This side will be equal to this one and this one will be equal to this one. So once we have measured the 2 sides, the longer one, it will become your length, and your shorter one, it will be your breadth. So looking at those 2 sides, you're supposed to get 1.5. 1.5 centimeter or at the breadth, you're supposed to get 0.1. So remember, there is a range. For your 1.5, if you got 1.4, it is still correct. If you got 1.6, it is still correct. Then for your breadth, if you got again your 0.8 or your 1 centimeter or your 1.1, you are still correct. So what happened is your 1 centimeter times 100. So why 100? Because we are using an orthophoto map and our answer is supposed to be on a meters. So your 1.5 times 100 will give you 150. Then we're going to take 1 centimeter. Remember, the breadth is between 0.9 to 1.1. So we're going to take 1 centimeter times 100 will give you 100 again. Then after that, we're going to have 150 times the 100, which will give us 15,000 meters squared. Because there is a meter and another meter, it will then result into the meters squared. Then again, if you receive 0.9, you will have 90. And if you receive a 1.1, you will have 110. So from the final answer, our range will be 12,600 meters squared to 17,600 meters squared. For the area alone, you will have a maximum of 5 marks or minimum of 4 marks or 3 marks should it happen that the examiner already calculated some of the measurements. So here we were not given, hence you have the full 5 marks. Then we're looking at our question 3.1.5. Which gradient is steeper? Is it 1:10 or 1:90? So this is a 2-in-1 question. Hence, the mark allocation is 2 times 1. It means you need to give 2 answers that will give you 1 mark each. So, which gradient is steeper, 1:10 or 1:90? Remember, we do not answer yes or no in this question, but we need to choose. Is it a 1:10 or a 1:90? Then after, you give a reason for your answer. So again, I'm going to give a 2 minutes, and then after 2 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solution. Then we're looking there at our solution as we were supposed to come up with which gradient is steeper between your 1:10 and your 1:90. So your 1:10 is the one that is steeper. So why it is steeper? Because for every 10 units you move horizontally, there is an increase of 1 unit vertically. Then again, if you are calculating a gradient and you are getting an answer between 1 to 25, then you're supposed to know that it is steeper. From 26 going up, it is gentle. So again, the accurate reason why it is steeper, for every 10 units you move horizontally, there is an increase of 1 unit vertically. Then we're looking at our figure 3.2. In our figure 3.2, you refer to the topographical map on the orthophoto map to answer the following questions. Your 3.2.1, refer to the topographical map and general information on the Saldanha Bay. A is a Saldanha Bay, IDZ, situated on the east or west coast. So the importance of reading the general information, even if you are not familiar with the area, but you are already given the information about this area. So here you are choosing, is it at the east or is it at the west coast? Then secondly, B, you identify the topographic the topography factor that influence the site. You will remember when it comes to the map interpretation, you will interpret what we have learned in the settlement and what we have learned in the economic. So the site, you have learned them in the settlement. So now you identify the topography, a factor that influence the site of the Saldanha Bay IDZ. Remember, the key there is to identify, but what are we identifying? The action verb is the topography factor. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solution. Right, girls and boys, looking at our question 3.2.1a, whereby you are supposed to tell on which the IDZ Saldanha is situated on which coast. It is situated on the west coast. Where do we get that? From the map of Saldanha, which is the map of South Africa that we are given the location, and also it is written in the general information. Then at B, you identify the photography factor that influence the site of the Saldanha Bay. Remember, we are talking about the photography. If we are talking about the photography, we're referring to the relief, or we're referring to the slope of the area. So therefore, it is a flat or it is a gentle land. So as it is flat, it is now becoming a site influence of why that area or why this IDZ is located on a flat or gentle land. You will remember again that it is easier or it is cheaper to construct on the gentle slope as compared to the steeper slope. Then at C and D, number C, explain the impact that one of these site factors had on the economic growth of Saldanha. So now we are looking at the impact of one of these site factors that we have already identified had on the economic growth of Saldanha Bay. Looking at the mark allocation, it's 1 times 2. It meaning we need to give one answer that will give us 2 marks. Then at D, you explain how environmental impact. It is important to identify what impact. You cannot just give an impact where else it was not in question. So here it's the environmental impact that is caused by the development of Saldanha Bay IDZ affect the inhabitants. When we are talking about the inhabitants, we are talking about the people of that area. So the environmental impact that is caused by the development of the Saldanha Bay IDZ affects the inhabitants, which is the people of Saldanha Bay. Another 1 times 2, which means it's one answer that will give you 2 marks. So again, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to write these 2 questions, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to go through the solutions. Right? Girls and boys, looking there at our question number C, in explaining the impact that one of these site factors, which is the flat or the gentle slope or the flat land, had on the economic growth of Saldanha Bay. So number 1, we said the flat or gentle land, it is cheaper to construct the infrastructure, which means they will use less money. More money, they will be able to save it because we are looking at the impact that will have on the economy. Easier to construct the infrastructure, or one can say it will be easier to expand. So therefore, they will use less money and they will be able to save the rest. Then At D, you explain how environmental impact caused by the development of the Saldanha Bay IDZ affects the inhabitants of Saldanha Bay. So, people will suffer from the respiratory problems. Remember, we're looking at the environmental impacts. So what are those environmental impacts? There could be air pollution in that area. So if there is air pollution, even water pollution, so air pollution will now affect people. They will not be able to breathe properly because of that environmental impact. So people will suffer from the respiratory problems that will give you 2 marks. The natural environment, which will be destroyed because of the building of infrastructure. When we are talking about the natural environment, we're talking about the trees that will be removed or that will be cut down, as well as the vegetation that will also be removed in order for the settlement to be built or in order for the infrastructure to be built. And it will result into less as a aesthetic appeal. Now it will make the area not to be beautiful. Then we're looking at the water quality as well as the influence on the inhabitants. So once there is water pollution again, it will now make people to be sick, and it will also be now in compromising their health. Then we're looking at our question 3.2.2. 3.2.2, you refer to block A3 and A4. So you are given A3 and A4. The major land use zone in block A3 is the rural urban fringe or the transition. So we are looking specifically at this block. Is that a rural urban fringe or it's a transition zone? Then number B, you state an agricultural activity that is found in the land use zone mentioned in question 3.2.2. So the agricultural activity that is found in this land use zone you have identified in question 3.2.2a. So I'm going to give you another 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solution. Right? When looking there at our solution, we were supposed to identify the land use zone, specifically at block A3. So at block A3, we realize that it is a rural urban fringe. Remember, why are we saying it's a rural urban fringe? Because there is the transition zone. Remember, it is located near the CBD, or it is found in the CBD. So therefore, we're looking at the outskirts in that map, and it is a rural urban fringe. Then at number B, you are supposed to state an agricultural activity that is found in the land use zone, which is the rural urban fringe. So we realize in that area there is a cultivated land. So therefore, it is crop farming, because we're already given that this is an agricultural activity. But now, what type of an agricultural activity guided by the cultivated land? We will be able to tell that this is a crop farming. Then we're looking at our question C and our question D. So question C, you explain the location of the land use zone you have mentioned in question 3.2.2a. So now we need to explain its location. Then D, suggest a reason for the situation of the sewage works in the land use zone mentioned in question 3.2.2a. So another 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to discuss the solutions. Right? looking there at our solutions as explaining the location of this land use zone. We have talked about the rural urban fringe. So by now you're supposed to know that the rural urban fringe, it is located on the outskirts. Remember, this is the mixture of rural and urban functions or activities. So therefore it is located on the outskirts because it is outside the CBD or at the end of the urban area, at the beginning of the rural area. So hence it is at the outskirts. Then your number D, you suggest a reason for the situation of the sewage works in the land use zone mentioned in question 3.2.2a. It is located on the outskirts due to the bad odor. That is a obvious reason because we are looking at the sewage works and it has a bad odor. So therefore, it can never be next to the CBD or even next to the residential because of its odor. So that is why it is located away. And also we're looking at on the outskirts, the land is cheaper. And also we're looking at the availability of space. Hence we are saying there is a huge space that is available for extending the sewage works. So those are the reason why it is situated on the outskirts. Then your figure 3.3. In our figure 3.3, remember this is where you should expect a questions based on GIS. Again, you will never determine which questions they will ask. So therefore, it is advisable that you practice all the GIS terms because if you know the terms, you will be able to apply them. So you refer to both a topographical map and orthophoto map. Your 3.3.1, the orthophoto map is an example of data gathered through remote sensing. Then the first question, you define the concept remote sensing. Remember all the definition, you will now be awarded with 2 marks. Then B, how did remote sensing assist the developers in determining the site of Saldanha Bay as an IDZ? So I'm going to give you another 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solutions. Right? Looking there at our solution, we're already given that the orthophoto is an example of the remote sensing. So now in defining or in getting more details about the remote sensing, we are saying this is the gathering of information or the gathering of data from the Earth surfaces from a distance using what? A satellite image. So in short, it's the gathering of data from a distance without being physical contact with the Earth. So what are they using? They are using a satellite image to gather this information. Then at B, how did this remote sensing being able to get that information from the distance without even going in the area? So how did the remote sensing assist the developers in determining the site of the Saldanha Bay IDZ? So by using a satellite image, because they have a broader perspective on the relief of area. So if you are saying they have a broader perspective, it means, remember, they were able to capture the whole area at a distance without even going there. So therefore, they were able to get accurate information, and also they were able to know on which side they were going to locate the IDZ, guided by the information they have gathered on the satellite image. Then they were also able to determine the availability of land. That's another very important, because you can say we want to build, but is there land that is available? So with the assistance of the satellite image, which is more accurate than a human being, so they were able to determine the availability of land for the expansion. Then we're looking at our next question. Our next question is 3.3.1a. You state the data layer. The data layer that creates better access for imports and exports, and give an example of the data layer from the topographic map. So you need to state that data layer that will create a better access between the trade, which is the import and the export. And you give an example as well of that data layer from the topographic map. Then at B, you explain how this data layer mentioned in question 3.3.2a improved export and import on the Saldanha Bay IDZ. So I'm going to give you another 3 minutes, and then after 3 minutes, we will be able to proceed to the solutions. Right? Looking there at our solutions at A, to state the data layer that creates the better access for import and export, and to give an example. So in the data layer, we are talking about the transport, which is the infrastructure. As we can see there are roads and also there are railways. So the infrastructure side is covered. Then we are giving an example also. There is an ocean in that Saldanha Bay. So if they have an ocean, it means all the transport mode, when it comes to the data layer identification, all the transport mode are covered in terms of the road, in terms of the air, in terms of the water. So when it comes to the example, we're looking at the harbor because there's an ocean. We're looking at the road. As we can see, there are roads there. And we're looking at the railway. So, in fact, to state the data layer that creates a better access for the import and export. Remember, they're supposed to exchange or transport goods in order for this import and export to be successful. So that data layer will be the transport in terms of the infrastructure. So now, when giving example, we're supposed to identify, or we're supposed to realize that there is a harbor, there is a road, and there is a railway, which are the examples of the transport infrastructure. Then we're looking at B. At B, you explain how this data layer mentioned in question 3.3.2a improved the export and export of the Saldanha Bay. The availability of harbor for the cheaper export as well as import products. Remember, the harbor, they are able now to export or import in bulk. So therefore, it becomes cheaper for them. And they are next to the harbor. There are no transportation costs that are added, because from the industries or from the factories straight to the harbor. The better access to the harbor through the roads as well as the railway line. So again, with the better roads and with the better railway, they are able to transport again, or they are able to use this mode so that they can be able to reach the harbor fast. So all in all, it makes the export as well as the import to improve because they have this transport infrastructure. Then, to summarize on what we have learned so far, we have learned about the map skills, we have looked into the map calculation, we have looked into the map interpretation, and then lastly, we have looked into the use of GIS. So to give you the preview of our next lesson, we will now be focusing on our final revision, which is our final exam preparation. We're going to start with our paper 1. You know that our paper 1, you should expect your climate and weather, as well as your geomorphology and your map work. So we have come to an end of our lesson today. Hopefully you have enjoyed the lesson, but most of all, I hope you have learned. Thank you and stay tuned for the next lesson.